So it's obviously after 8:30 as we're getting started here. It's 8:31, and I'll give that credit to Pitt Tough Guy who asked the question. The first question was posted in the chat 20 minutes before we even got started. But it's a question that maybe look something up real quick. So that's why we're a few minutes later. I mean, we're always late. What are you going to do? I mean, I've never started right at 8:30. It's always like 8:31 or something like that. Or 8:32 or 8:33, depending on how the night might be going. But I was just about ready to start right at 8:30, and then Pitt Tough Guy had a question, so we had to. I just wanted to look something up real quick to get the latest updated info, and we'll definitely get to that question here in a few minutes after we welcome Jim in and get things rolling here on the Wednesday night show. It's the live Panther-Lair Show on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.Arrivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You found it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards to interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans. All day, every day, Pitt fans are hanging out at Panther-Lair.com. You can, too, to talk with other Pitt fans. You know what we always ask you to do here during the live show? Of course, like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you don't miss any of our Pitt video content. Whether it is our daily morning Pitt videos, the weekly live show like the one we're doing right now, or the post-game shows after the game. We'll be live after the Clemson game on Saturday, probably be live around 6 or 7 o'clock on Saturday night. We'll have some drinks. We'll talk about Pitt, and we'll see what happens in that game. And, hey, if it goes really bad on Saturday afternoon, we can always talk about the Pitt basketball game on Friday night because the Panthers play West Virginia. So we could transition the football post-game show into a basketball post-game show if it doesn't go well for the football game. But, you know, we'll see what happens. I mean, I can't sit here and pretend like, boy, I'm feeling great about Pitt's chances. And, you know, for a variety of reasons, not the least of which the line of scrimmage, which it sure looks like favors Clemson on both sides of the ball. But we'll talk about that tonight. We'll get into the matchups and what we think about Pitt-Clemson. We'll talk about the Pitt basketball team. You know, all those Pitt topics are on the table as always that we'll be talking about. So if you want to join the conversation, get in the chat right there on the right, post your comment or your question. We'll read your comment and answer your question. We'll get through as many as we can. And if you want to make sure we answer your question or read your comment, you can be a super chatter. Click the little dollar sign down in the corner there. Kick a couple bucks to the podcast. We appreciate the support. We will be sure to read your comment or your question. I mean, there's some that we're going to jump into right off the bat because I want to talk about these topics. But otherwise, you know, you can sort of force our hand. If you're worried that we're not going to take your comment or question, you can force our hand by paying us because, look, everybody's got a price, right? And mine could be as little as like $2. So, you know, you get what you pay for, I guess. I should start doing that. Like, you know, because there's different amounts that you can use as a super chatter. So I should start like, you know, basing the extensiveness of the answer on, you know, what kind of super chatter you are. I won't do that, but it'd be funny if we did. There's some people who donate bigger amounts, and I would just be talking for a really long time. And somebody could ask a really involved question for a small super chatter amount, and we'd have to go short. But we won't do that. We won't play favorites like that. And what we will do, though, is bring Jim into the show. Welcome in our good friend Jim Hammett. James, glad to have you join us this evening. There was something I was going to go to first. I forget which question I wanted to get to first. But what's going on tonight? How are you, Jim?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm good. You ready to are you still planning on coming in Friday night for the basketball game and staying through for the football game on Saturday, or just coming on Saturday?
I don't know. I'm going back and forth because I think I'm going to the Steeler game Sunday. So basketball, football seems like a lot. So we're still up.
I mean, you're not adding something. I mean, like, I don't know. It's a noon football game on Saturday. Steelers Ravens, is that at 1 o'clock on Sunday?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty. It's not like you're going to be up super late with any of those games. Basketball, you were just going to go and observe, right? You're leaving me to do all the work, so you know you get out of there at a reasonable time. So you know.
I mean, I might like write something off. I didn't check with Pitt, like, because you know, like Cassie, who's in charge of like the media seating, she's like, you guys never both come to games. I was like, oh no, never. Then like 2 days later, I was like, I might go to the backyard brawl.
Well, you might. I mean, you can find a seat somewhere. I think there's still like tickets available. Actually,
Expensive tickets available.
Yeah, expensive ticket. Let me bring up the basketball. Oh, they have a little ticket icon. Isn't that good? Let's see. Men's basketball single game tickets. Let's see what is the option. You can get it as low as $53 for the basketball game. I don't know where a $53 seat would be. Let's Upper Bowl section 204 would be $50. So, section 202, you can get it for $45 plus the $8 ticket fee. So, I mean, you have that. You could get tickets as much as $80 or $180, actually, in what looks like right behind the zoo. You could sit behind the zoo for $188. Like, where do you draw the line, Jim, on charging for a game like this? You know what I mean? Or any game. Single game tickets. I mean, you obviously have to make a certain amount of money, but you want the place to be full, don't you? I don't know. Isn't there a certain point where you start lowering prices just to get people in the building?
You would think. I mean, you just kind of look at just like how organically, like the volleyball, like whenever they have a big match and they play at the Pitt, like they don't like gouge the ticket prices. They're almost general admission throughout the whole place. And like the atmosphere for some of those volleyball matches have been great. So, I mean, historically in basketball, it's the ACC games, it's the conference games that, get people in, and people aren't really thinking basketball right now, but it's still West Virginia. It's still a big game. You still want a great crowd, and I'm sure it'll be a good crowd, but I don't know. I'm sure if, offered a $25 ticket and, kind of made it reasonable, I think you'd probably get a few more people there. So I don't know. The other thing I was ranting about this game is it's not on TV. Like, how does the Backyard Brawl not get on TV?
Yeah. What is do you know what ESPN is airing on Friday night at 8:00?
I know what the ACC network is airing at 8:00.
What is it?
The big American at North Carolina game.
Really?
Yeah, over one of the biggest rivalries in college sports. American.
Let me look at the ESPN family of networks. That's amazing. That they would have that on. ESPN has NBA Countdown, and NBA games. So I guess I get that. I don't know about ESPN2. Where's ESPN? Everything here is ESPN Plus. I don't know what ESPN2 has on, but yeah, I mean, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be on the ACCNX, and there should not be any networks that have 5 letters in their name, by the way. Like, it shouldn't be like ACCNX. That shouldn't exist, or ESPN Plus. No, ESPN2 has women's basketball from 6 to 8. I don't know about it. 8:00, what ESPN2 has. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah, that's annoying. I just happen to be looking at single game tickets for the Pitt Clemson football game, and you can get sideline lower level for as little as $55. Now, there are only single seats available. I don't know if that means you can't get tickets together, but you can get in the lower bowl for less than you can, or roughly the same amount that you can get into like the upper level of the Pitt basketball game, which, there's more seats in Agrisher Stadium, obviously, and that's going to impact things as far as availability. But I don't know. At some point you need to lower the prices, in the interest of getting people into the building and making it cool, like making it a good environment. I think that's important. It's not to get too sidetracked on like crowds and stuff, but of all the damage done to the Pitt basketball program by the Kevin Stallings era, and really the first 4 years of the Jeff Capel era, or however many it was, maybe some of the worst damage that's been done, and it still hasn't been repaired, is what it did to the crowds. Like, Monday night was pathetic. And I know it's a Monday night, it's 7:00, it's Gardner Webb, but and I hate to even say back in the day, but it was back in the day, like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, even a Monday night against Gardner Webb would have had a decent crowd. It would have had 8,000 people, or 7,000 people. There couldn't have been 2,000 people there. And I'm never the one to call out the students, but man, the zoo was dead. They showed up last Friday night for the Murray State game, but they were dead. They didn't even fill the one section behind the benches with students, let alone that section plus the 2 sections on the baseline. I mean, they've they've forgotten how to be a proper student section. And I totally blame Kevin Stallings in the first 4 years of Jeff Capel for that. I mean, that's what sapped it, because they were awesome, but it takes time to build that. And man, they are not there. I don't know how it came through on the TV, but it was not good.
Yeah, I didn't even notice. I did the opening game. I was at the first game, and I thought the Oakland Zoo was pretty into it. I thought they were pretty good, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, whatever, like the Pete first opened, like you remember, like it was like impossible to get tickets even for games against Murray State and Gardner-Webb. I mean, like it was like sold out those first 10 years, and I don't know. I mean, I guess interest waned in some of these lesser games, and I'm sure the pandemic that year didn't help matters either, and this and that. But you would think, I don't know what it would take to get it back. Like, does Pitt have to be preseason ranked to draw a crowd for Gardner-Webb? Probably.
Yeah, I mean, they need to have. They've had a good last 2 seasons, but they need to keep having those seasons, to build it back up. I mean, like when the Zoo was a proper student section, man, like those kids never sat down. Yeah. Like never sat down. And like when the other team had the ball, it was deafening. I mean, maybe I'm over exaggerating for like a Gardner-Webb type of game, but they got loud and they were into it. Murray State game, they would have been loud and into it. And I mean, I'm watching like Murray State shoot free throws, and like half the students behind the basket are like sitting down. Like, I'm like, what are you doing? You're supposed, and there's a bunch that are doing what they're supposed to be doing as a proper student section, but like, I'm just, and I mean, I don't want to sound like super old guy, but yeah, 15 years ago, there weren't cell phones, because you look down at the student section and half of them are on their phones, and I'm just like, damn guys, like there's something you're supposed to be doing right now. When Pitt has the ball, you're supposed to be chanting like, let's go Pitt and Pitt stuff. And when the other team has the ball, you're supposed to be screaming your bloody head off for the entire time. And that's what you are supposed to do. And that's what they used to do. And like Stallings killed it. And the early Capel years killed it. And it's taking time to build back up. And I guess it has to grow organically, but it'll be better during conference games. I get that. But I feel like even last year during the big conference games, they still didn't have, they had the numbers, but they didn't have the energy that they needed to have. And I'm not bashing the students. I mean, I think the Panther Pitt at the football games has been great. But they need some of the old heads to come in and show, Mike Tam, Mike Tam.
Yeah,
I mean that's
at every game.
That he is still at every game. Like he is still bringing energy, and JD and those guys who just like, and like DBJ and Cat Basket, all these people like back in the day who just were nonstop. They were there 4 hours before the game and they were screaming. They need to come through and give a little lesson to the young kids about what the old timers used to do. But all right. Enough of that. The students, I mean, like, they have to build it back up. They have to learn. You got to build a culture, Jim. Brick by brick. You got to build a culture, That applies to the student section as well. Scott Mitchell says, somehow Pat Narduzzi has had Dabo Swinney's number in the past, which makes me feel like Clemson will use the whole arsenal to ensure victory over an already vulnerable team. He follows up and says, I know 2-2 isn't exactly having one's number, but I'm certain that meant that not many coaches are 500 or better versus Dabo. So, I mean, Pitt has a 1-point win at Clemson, right? And what was the 21 game? Do you remember what the final was of that? It was like
27-17.
Something like that, yeah. And then Clemson, conversely, has a 42-10 win, and
I don't even
52-17 or something like that. So Clemson has the scoring margin favors Clemson in those 4 games for sure. I would agree that I don't think Narduzzi necessarily has Dabo's number, but he was able to pull off a miracle upset on the road in 2016, and then a game where Pitt, quite frankly, should have won in 2021, which they ultimately did. This game, Jim, I just keep feeling worse and worse about it. I mean, it's just, what scares me the most is the lines. And it's the lines on both sides of the ball. I'm almost just as worried for Pitt's defense as I am for the offense. Like, I think Clemson, I think their offensive line is really good. Although I noticed you did the breakdown of Clemson's roster and starters and stuff. And, all the 4- and 5-star guys you mentioned, I don't think any were along the offensive line, right? Where I feel like they were all like defensive guys and receivers and running backs. Am I right about that?
Yeah, but I'm sure like the Clemson linemen are 4 stars as well. I guess I didn't really look at it too much, but yeah, looking at the defensive line, it's scary because like even like the guys that like aren't their best defensive linemen are 5-stars. It's like everyone's a 5-star. Like their 5th or 6th defensive tackle, like Peyton Page or something. Like he's awesome. Like he was like one of the biggest recruits in the country a couple years ago. So the one thing you notice whenever you look at that, no transfers. That team does not have a transfer.
Right. Don't they see what Indiana's doing?
That's a big topic right now.
Indiana brought in 30 transfers. Why is it everyone? I mean, hey, everybody should have been going after James Madison guys, I guess, right? Yeah, it worries me. And like I say, like it almost worries me just as much for Pitt's defense. I mean, obviously the offensive line is going to have a huge challenge, but I feel like Clemson's offensive line is going to be really good. I think they're going to have a pretty good chance of controlling the line of scrimmage. Clemson is going to be able to run the ball. I feel like there's 2 ways this can go, and they're both extreme. One is a miracle, inspirational upset win, and the other is just a complete blowout that has people leaving in the third quarter. And I'm not sure I see something in the like. I don't see this being a 24-19 loss. I feel like it's either they're going to win or they're going to get blown out. Am I over exaggerating here?
I mean, like at a time before Pitt started playing really poorly over the past couple of weeks, I just thought this would naturally be a close game. I thought it would be like the 2021 game where it's just like both defenses kind of know what the offenses are doing. They're going to sit on each other, and it's going to be a game in the 20s. I thought it would just naturally be close. Now I'm not so sure, just because I don't think Pitt's offense has shown anything, and what I think they're averaging 313 yards over the past 4 games. They haven't even reached 300 yards in 3 of the past 4 games. So it's just been that ugly. Then you throw in shuffling offensive line, a quarterback that took a hit last week, and just nothing's working on that side of the ball. So, I mean, I think the Pitt defense, I think they could, they could be competitive. I think Kyle Lewis, Rasheed Biles can make plays, and Donovan McMillan will be flying around, but like, just kind of like how last year went, it's like you could be as good as you want to be on defense, but your offense eventually has to move the ball, and they're just not moving the ball right now.
Yeah. I mean, you compare it to 2021, and, Pitt doesn't have Kenny Pickett, and Clemson doesn't have DJU. And so that, it would be a lot better if it would be a lot better for Pitt if both of those teams still had those quarterbacks, but unfortunately they don't. And Biles and Lewis are awesome. McMillan, but I mean, I could still see Clemson rattling off 5, 6, 7 yards per clip, just getting that much of a push up front on offense. And then defensively, I mean, I have a hard time seeing Pitt running the ball all that well, and I think they're going to get into the backfield. And if it's an 8 Yarnell, which I think you and I probably expect that it will be, I mean, he's got experience. It's not like he's brand new and fresh off the boat, but like,
Assignment.
It is. And maybe this is like some kind of reverse psychology where I just build it up to be such a bad matchup for Pitt, and then they come out and they're really competitive until like a pick 6 early in the fourth quarter puts it out of reach. But I don't know. I really feel like it. I don't know. So what's the win? Like what's the key to win here? Like how can Pitt pull this upset? Were they still double-digit dogs here? Or is it still 10 or 11? What's the last number you saw?
Last number I saw is 10. I mean, like, I don't know. Like, can it be like the Florida State game last year where they were in it? Like, for some reason, they were in that game until, the mistakes happened. But, like, they played inspired. Bub Means had a pretty sweet touchdown. Then who fumbled at the 1 yard line?
Mumfield. He didn't fumble at the 1. He fumbled in the end zone, basically, because he was credited with an 82-yard reception from the 18. Like a total screw job right there. I mean, like that was not as bad as what we saw in the Virginia game with the 4th down, but it was a disaster. It was a terrible call.
So I don't know. I mean, I guess the recipe to pulling the upset is keeping it low scoring, like. Because right now, Pitt has shown no ability that it's going to go march up and down the field like it was doing earlier in the season. I mean, it's every yard's a blessing at this point. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, just try to make it ugly, I guess. But I don't. The thing with Clemson right now is they have so much to play for because this is their last conference game. They are 6-1. They need to go 7-1. They need to stay pace with Not Louisville,
Miami.
SMU and Miami and all
Yeah.
those teams. So, I think the first question we were asked, it's like, oh, just because Narduzzi's played them tough, Clemson's going to be inspired. No, they're going to be inspired because they want to win the ACC still. And in order to do that, they have to win on Saturday.
Yeah. It's crazy that this is their final. They must have thought they were going to be in the SEC this year because they scheduled the Citadel in their 11th game, which is totally an SEC move. I think Texas and Oklahoma have that game scheduled this year too, have like that FCS game in the next to last week. It's like, wow, you guys just jumped right into the SEC scheduling model. You just, you planned it right out. I haven't seen this. Obviously South Carolina plays Clemson in the final week. Florida plays Florida State in the final week, right? That's like the traditional end of season game. Do Georgia Tech play in the final week? Is that a traditional? I wonder, like is Texas Kentucky. So is that game in the final week this year? I remember that being in an early season game years ago, but
which game?
Kentucky Louisville.
I think they've been trying to do like the SEC rivalry game last game of the season. So I think it kind of shifted.
So I wondered, is is Texas playing like Texas Tech or something, or Oklahoma playing Oklahoma State in the final week? I mean, that would be cool. Although I'm sure those Big 12 teams are like, screw you guys, not gonna do anything you want to do.
Yeah, I don't know how that works because like I think Washington and Washington State played this year, but like nobody at Washington State can like Washington at all right now.
Yeah, right.
Like, they needed to get 12 games. Do you see next year Washington State and Oregon State are playing twice?
Yes, I did see that.
Round robin.
Yeah. Texas Texas does not have that kind of a schedule this year. They play Kentucky in the 11th game, and then they play A&M in the finale. What about Oklahoma though? I feel like one of them scheduled it. No, not Oklahoma either. I could have sworn. Oh, Oklahoma had Maine in their like 9th game of the season. So maybe that was what I was thinking of. But they finished the season against Alabama and LSU. So have fun with that, Oklahoma. Anyway, the hell were we talking about? Clemson just being done with the regular season or done with the conference schedule this week. That's kind of crazy. I mean, I guess they played a lot of games early, obviously, but it's kind of weird that we're already to that point in the season where a team is done with its conference schedule. So yeah, this is a kind of a make or break game for them. They have to come out of this, with one loss and hope that Miami or SMU stumbles. Although I think would they like, if everybody wins out, would they end up, would Clemson be in? Do you know?
I don't know. And our good friend Stephen Thompson from the Post-Gazette texted me this morning. He's like, I just read the ACC tiebreakers, and I don't know if I think I know less.
I think I mostly get it. You know what? There was actually somebody tweeted or posted a link on our board to this site that you can go through and pick,
do all the scenarios,
pick all the results. Let me so I have Clemson winning. What else are we talking about? Miami and SMU, okay, and then Miami and SMU. If you do that, Clemson would finish 3rd because of the record versus common conference opponents. So Clemson needs to win, and then
hope
they need Miami to lose or SMU. What if SMU loses a game? Let's say SMU loses to Virginia. Clemson would still finish 3rd. So Clemson. Clemson needs Miami to lose. I mean, that's the biggest thing, or SMU to lose twice, because that would put Clemson in. So, I mean, that's what they're hoping for. They need, but I mean, first thing for Clemson, like you said, is to win. You know what I mean? Because then they get themselves in the ACC championship game. If those other sort of scenarios play out, I'm not really going to bother looking at what Pitt scenarios are. Pitt wins out and Miami loses. I think if Pitt wins out and Miami loses, Pitt can still make the ACC championship game. And we should talk about that just to mention it while we still can. So
yeah,
that could happen. Let's see here. This was the first thing, and I wanted to look it up real quick. Pitt Tough Guy says roster limits. The immediate result is that students can no longer try out walk onto their school's varsity teams, yet it is those same students' tuition and fees that are going to subsidize varsity players' pay. So here's the whole thing about the roster limits. I guess, did this get announced? I was just reading on ESPN. I had to look this up. Got announced 2 days ago I guess, what the limits will be under the House or proposed roster limits for NCAA score, like, Division I sports. So like football have a roster max, right? So the whole deal, Jim, just to bring everybody up to speed, they're going to eliminate scholarship limits. You get unlimited scholarships, but there'll be roster limits. So football roster limit will be 105 players. Schools could give up to 105 scholarships. Baseball, 34 players. You could have 34 scholarships. And all these limits are lower than what the average roster size was. So football teams averaged about 121 players on the roster. They're going to cut that limit down to 105. Now, of those 121, only 85 could be on scholarship. They're going to eliminate the scholarship limit, lower the roster max. But here's the thing, and I think what the question is sort of pertaining to what a lot of people have said is like, oh, by eliminating scholarship limits, but lowering roster limits or creating roster limits, you are giving schools the opportunity to have no walk-ons. So you just put every player on scholarship. And so, that there's not going to be any walk-ons anymore. But we've already seen the SEC announce they're going to have an 85 scholarship limit. Did you see that when that came out? It was either earlier this week or late last week.
I missed the SEC thing. I mean, like, I know, I just didn't see that. So
yeah. So that, I mean, let me just, the SEC is going to keep the 85 scholarship limit for 2025. So at least for 2025. This came out last week. And this is why I haven't been like, oh, walk-ons are going to go away forever. Because even though you can give out 105 scholarships in football, I'm not sure. And I think you and I talked about this when the House settlement was first announced, or some of the terms were. I don't think everybody's going to give out 105 scholarships in football. I don't think Pitt is going to have 105 scholarship football players. And as you work down the line, like the limit for baseball is 34. Very few teams, I would say not more than a couple in the ACC, and not more than, I don't even know how many. Not many would actually have 34 full scholarship baseball players, or 28 full scholarship women's soccer players, or 28 men's soccer players, or 30 full scholarship wrestlers, or even 15 full scholarship men's basketball players. So they can't even play. They don't even use 13 guys. They have 13 scholarships, but they don't even play 13 guys. There's no reason to have 15 on scholarship. Half of them are going to transfer every year anyway. So I don't think you're going to see walk-ons gone. I think there will still be walk-ons because they're not going to use these full limits of scholarships. And the SEC is setting the tone by saying we're only going to give out 85 anyway. Even though we can give out 105, we're only going to give out 85.
Yeah, I kind of remember asking like Pat Narduzzi early in the season, like, oh, how do you feel about like scholarships being increased? And he was like, no, our roster is being decreased. I don't think in those terms.
Yeah,
like coaches think like I have 120 guys, and like he values the walk-ons, and like in my head I don't. So like that. So for him it was. I mean, not that I don't, but like
to me, you mean nothing.
Well, like I don't. There's no pat signal when they commit. I don't write an article about it whenever I am going to further my education at Pitt and play on the football team. I don't usually acknowledge those as much, but you know what I mean, though. Like, it's like I think in terms of scholarship players, because we cover recruiting, and like I know every scholarship player on the team pretty much like the back of my hand. But it's interesting, and I think even Narduzzi said we have to find what's best for us. We have to find the number that's best for us. I don't think it'll be 105, but we don't know yet. Like. So I think every school and every conference and everyone's going to look at it a little bit differently, but I can't imagine a lot of places are going to go 105 because there's no value in it. Like you're putting guys on full scholarship for no reason. Like, yeah. So I don't get it.
And like a decent chunk of them are, it's already like you have 85 scholarship guys and 15 will transfer every year anyway. Mm-hmm. So if you have 105 scholarship guys, that just means that 35 are going to transfer every year. I mean, you're going to have that kind of churn and it's not good value. I think, like you're saying, you're not getting good return on your money there. I'm just going to roll through these comments and questions. There's lots of things I want to talk about. Our good friend Pitt Chag says it's Ish's team. And this was a funny discussion about the Pitt basketball team this offseason about whose team is it? Is it Ishmael Leggett's team? Is it going to be Jalen Lowe's team? And I was on team Jalen Lowe. A lot of people were on team Ishmael Leggett, but now there's sort of a different conversation you can have about who's the best player on the team. So Jim, and then actually one person replied to, I tweeted a link to my article about Ishmael Leggett today, and somebody replied and said that Leggett is the heart and soul of the team. So Jim, who's the best player on this team? Whose team is it? And if you want, who's the heart and soul of the team? And you have to pick different people. Actually, if you want to pick all three, pick the same person for all three, knock yourself out.
All right, so best player, Jalen Lowe. Team, I could buy Leggett just because he's a senior. Heart and soul, the Diaz-Graham twins.
The duo, huh?
The duo.
Okay. The last remaining triplets. So
the longest tenured players on the team.
Yeah. It's funny because like my initial reaction to the who's the best player now question is like, oh, it's Ishmael Leggett. He's the leading scorer and he has made 14 of 14 layups this year and he shot 7 of 9 the other night. But like, I don't want to forget that Jalen Lowe, scored 41 points in the first 2 games. Like he had an off night, and on his off night where he only scored like 8 points against Gardner-Webb, he still had 5 assists and 2 or 3 steals. So even on his off night, it's not like he was bad. He just didn't shoot very well. He looked kind of like, he almost looked like he was like sick or something. He just seemed to be moving like slow. I don't know. He didn't have the same sort of burst in energy that he typically has. I don't know what was going on there, but you can still get, what did Leggett have? 21 from Leggett. You can get 12 from Damian Dunn, 12 from Cam Corrin. And then volume based, you can get 10 from Guillermo and 10 from Zach Austin. So you can still get scoring when Jalen Lowe doesn't score, but it's better when he does. I think it's his team, maybe just because he's the point guard and, that kind of thing. And he just seems like more of a talker than Ishmael Leggett. Ishmael Leggett's kind of like quieter, kind of. I don't know how he is in the locker room or that kind of thing, but I feel like I could see Lowe being more of a talker and Leggett being the best player. And then I don't know about the heart and soul thing. I don't really.
You made me answer it.
I know. I said if you want to answer it, I said if you want to, but I don't know. It's fun to watch. What do you think about this game on Wednesday night? We've seen them play Radford, Murray State, and Gardner-Webb. I'm not going to ask you to like scout West Virginia unless you have, but do you expect sort of like this like eye-opening, like, oh crap, this is what they look like against a real team type of game from Pitt on Friday night?
It's obviously going to be like a level up in competition. I mean, the thing with West Virginia, it's brand new coach and all 5 guys are transfers. Like there's no continuity at all. It's a brand new team. I know they killed Robert Morris and they kind of struggled with UMass. So the one thing is West Virginia has a really good player and it's the coach's son. He what's their DeVries? Is that how you say it?
Sure. I don't know.
I don't know. But he came from Drake. He averaged like 22 points last year. He has like 1,900 career points in his 3 years at Drake. So he's a good player, 6'7" wing. So obviously the antenna has to be up for him. But I don't know about everyone else. Like I looked at some of the other guys that are starting. Like they're like guys that were on Illinois' like the 8th and 9th man at Illinois last year are now starting for West Virginia. So I don't know. It might take a couple years for that to get going. It's kind of a messy end to the Bob Huggins era than whatever happened last year. So I don't know. It's not the typical West Virginia team that Pitt has seen throughout the years, but it'll be better than the first 3 games, I would imagine.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I think the lineups are going to be really interesting too. I sort of expect Jeff Capel is going to try to hang on to this 3 guard plus Guillermo and Corrin lineup to start games at least as long as he can. By my math, he got about 17 minutes out of it on Monday night, but obviously part of that was dealing with Cam Corrin dealing with foul trouble. Which, well, a brief aside there. Aberration here in the first 3 games. I think somebody pointed out that Corrin is averaging like 6.3 fouls per 40 minutes. Aberration, or should we expect Cam Corrin to be in foul trouble pretty regularly?
Well, it seems both of them. Like I feel like Guillermo's getting his money's worth too. And I remember like when I went to the open practice, we interviewed Papa and they were like, Oh, he gets his fouls too. So like they have like 15 or 20, I guess, if you count Jorge, to use down low. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that could be a lingering problem throughout the year.
Yeah.
I wonder, like, they're kind of overwhelming the smaller teams with the two big guys. I wonder how it works against a team like West Virginia, who presumably has better players and better athletes than Gardner Webb.
Yeah, I would think so. And a little bit more size. Gardner Webb wasn't very big. They had some bigger guards, but they didn't really have a lot of size down low. That could, and Pitt still only out rebounded them by like 2. Although I think Gardner Webb might have out rebounded Tennessee or like played them tough. There were a few like comparisons between Gardner Webb's game against Tennessee and Gardner Webb's game against Pitt, and the comparisons seemed to favor Pitt. But I digress. I think Capel's going to stick with this starting lineup as long as he can, and then by the first media timeout, if not before, Zach Austin's going to be the first sub. He's going to replace Guillermo, and then you're going to have rotating centers for most of the rest of the game, except for the start of the second half when they'll go back to that group. I just think we're going to see diminishing minutes with Koren and Guillermo on the court at the same time, particularly as Amsal Delilich becomes more integrated into the lineup. And I think it'll become just a one-off or a two-off each game where they actually have both of those guys on the court together. Because it just, I don't know. Do you agree with the popular fan sentiment that it just doesn't seem to be working all that well?
I think they're just better suited with Zach Austin playing the 4 or Delilich or something like that. I think just the smaller lineup's going to work better for them. Just, you have 3 guards, and the thing is, like, your guards kind of rebound well. Like, Leggett's probably one of your better rebounders. Damian Dunn gets his hands on a lot of things. So, like, I don't know what you're like, Guillermo's rebounding okay these first couple games, but I don't know what you're really truly gaining by having both of them out there.
Yeah, I agree. Guillermo had 9 rebounds against Gardner Webb. Cameron Koren had 6. And it's interesting too, because when I asked that question just now about putting those two guys together, the first thing you mentioned was Zach Austin. And maybe, we're all focused on whether or not Guillermo can play the 4, but maybe the bigger factor is not can Guillermo play the 4, although that's part of the question, but is Austin better at the 4 than Guillermo? And it sort of looks that way. And I think especially with the talent of the 3 guards and then Delilich working his way in, Austin's proving himself to be a pretty useful player, I think, this year. And so you want to get him on the court, but you're also going to have your 3 guards out there as much as you can. You're going to get Delilich in the mix, but presumably he's playing like the 3, so you'll have 2 guards, Delilich, and a 4, but you want Austin to be out. Like, that could impact Guillermo's minutes at the 4 as much as Guillermo's own performance, right?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of, like, the team functions a little bit better, and, like, Zach Austin's, like, been great at defense. He's their best shot blocker. I mean, he just brings a lot of different things to the table. I think whenever you get into conference play, and I think this happened a little bit last year, his offense went away and his minutes started to decrease. I mean, like, and I kind of remember, like, Capel, like, not like wanting more out of him, but he did. I think he wanted, like, okay, if you're not going to score, you have to be an elite defender, and you have to play this hard all the time. And I think he's kind of understanding that more this season. I think he's understanding, oh, this is what I'm here to do. I scored 15 points a game at High Point. I'm not asked to do that here. I just need to go block shots, rebound, and, just be the best athlete on the floor, which 9 times out of 10 he is.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's like they're not getting, I don't know if they've just sort of have to accept it. I think I accepted it last year that his game, he's just not going to produce much for you in the half court offense. I just don't think you're going to run many sets for him. I don't think he's going to really be able to flourish there. But where he's going to flourish is putbacks and offensive rebounds, although he has 1 offensive rebound this year. But transition, I think Leggett and him ran that transition where Leggett puts it up off the backboard and Austin slams it for a dunk against Gardner Webb. But this season, 3 games, 14 rebounds. It's a little less than 5 rebounds per game, and he's got 10 blocks in 3 games. Now they're coming in bunches, and I don't think he's going to average 3 blocks per game all season, but that seems to be his role, and he's functioning well in it. Do you believe in the spark off the bench, Jim? That, like, this idea that if you have a talented player, maybe it's better to have him come off the bench and he can give you a spark Do you buy that?
Well, Pitt is the 2-time holder of the ACC Sixth Man of the Year award.
I know that. I know, but I mean, like, do you buy it as a strategy? They're like, oh, this is the best thing. Like, not just that this guy's not one of our 5 best, because presumably you're starting your 5 best, but that he actually improves us because he is one of our 5 best, and we bring him off the bench. So instead of playing at the beginning of the game, he comes in 5 minutes in and boom, changes everything.
I don't know. I mean, right now, I mean, just with Capel, I mean, you just can tell he's just trying everything. Like, there's lineups out there whenever both twins and like Delilich were out there, I think, for like a little stretch or something. You know, there's just been like different weird combinations. So I don't know. I mean, I could buy the spark thing. I get it, but I don't know how real it is.
Yeah.
You know, everyone always gets worked up about like who's the starting 5. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, who's playing in the final 8 minutes of the game is what matters. So I think Pitt has the luxury of this year is you can play the first 30 minutes and see what's working. Okay, Guillermo's hot today. Like, all right, maybe Zach Austin's not going to play a little bit. And, you know, it just things like that. And, oh, wow, Braden Cummings is hot. Like, that hasn't happened. We can give him more minutes. So I think it's an 8-man rotation is what I'm seeing. I mean, I think the cut line is like Jorge's 9. Like, and I think most games he's not going to play more than 3 or 4 minutes.
Yep. So. Yeah, just looking at the minutes so far, I mean, obviously Guillermo started every game. Austin's come off the bench. They're playing almost the same amount. You know, Guillermo's playing 25 minutes. Austin's playing 24 minutes per game. So, you know, and I wouldn't be surprised if Guillermo continues starting and Austin's minutes eventually exceed what Guillermo's playing. And that could be partially due to foul trouble and things like that. But it's going to be interesting to see. I think it's going to be really interesting to watch how these lineups play out. Obviously, you want those 3 guards on the court as much as you can get them, but you're going to need to take breaks. You're going to need to rotate guys around. And I think that's where like Delilich comes in as a sub at the 3. It's where Cummings comes in as a sub at one of the, you know, the lead guard spot. And it's where Austin comes in as a sub at forward, which allows you then sub Guillermo for Corin and all these kinds of things. I mean, like, maybe that's your ideal rotation, right? You start off with the 3 guards, Guillermo and Corin. 5 minutes in or first media timeout, you bring in Austin for Guillermo. Next media timeout, you bring in Guillermo for Corin. And maybe you bring in Delilich for one of the guards. And just kind of rotate through it like that. And then you get Cummings some minutes. And so a few people on the message board, I were like, you know, I don't want to take Dunn out for Delilich. And I don't think it necessarily needs to be a 1-for-1 trade there because you've got a lot of different ways you can mix and match. You can play 3 guards plus Austin and a center. You can play 2 guards plus Delilich, Austin, and a center. You can play 1 guard plus Austin, Delilich, Guillermo, and a center and Corin, you know, like, which I think they did. They had a lineup that was, it was Jalen Lowe, Zach Austin, Amsal Delilich, Jorge and Guillermo, which was one of the weirdest looking lineups I've ever seen. And I don't really know what you're attempting to accomplish there. But you know, Delilich, gotta say, Jim, 8 minutes, thought he handled the ball pretty well. Jeff Capel said we didn't catch his passes because we haven't seen passes like that, which I took as like high praise for Delilich. I thought his shot looked good. I know he got blocked, but he was pretty amped up, I think, to fire that first shot. I thought he dribbled the ball well. He looked comfortable. It's only 8 minutes, and obviously I have my own biases and thoughts on what he's going to be able to do, but I thought he looked pretty good. I don't know. What did you think for Amsal Delilich's debut on Monday night?
Hey, I took note his first offensive possession. I think he had an assist to Cam Corin.
Sure did.
And no, I thought he looked comfortable. And he looked like a pro. Like, he is a pro. He played professional basketball. Like, he's good. Like, he'll be fine. He's going to transition just fine. So once he gets fully up to speed, I think that then we could probably have this whole how the rotation looks conversation again, because he might need more minutes. And I don't know. I mean, I like that first game, I think, or the exhibition, like they started Austin instead of Dunn, and that never made sense to me. Like, I think Pitt functions best when they have 3 guards. You look at 2 years ago, it was the 3-guard lineup. Last year, when Leggett was in with Lowe and Carrington, like, that's when they're at their best. So it makes sense to me that Dunn's a starter and he's going to play a lot. And I think that's when Pitt's at their best. But I don't know if there's going to be games when Guillermo's hot, Delilich is hot, or Austin's just cooking on defense. Like, you have a lot of different ways you can go about it.
Yeah, and you're right. Austin started that Point Park game, but, you know, Capel likes to go back to his starting lineup to open the second half. And when he went to the second half against Point Park, Dunn was in there. Austin wasn't. And it's been that way ever since. I do think Delalich's improvement and development opens up the opportunities for them to use Austin more at the 4 and keep Guillermo at the 5. I think like there are a lot of ways the lineups can go, but I think if he plays up to the level that, I've been hyping him up to, it can create some of those opportunities. Like people who want Guillermo to stay at the 5 should be rooting for Austin or Amsal Delalich to be really good, because I think one hand will wash the other on that. Matt Fry says 3-0 the rest of the way could salvage the season and prove it wasn't a fluke and that Pitt wasn't a phony. What do you need out of these last 3 games, Jim? I know obviously, ideal would be 10-2 would be amazing, but like what would still be good enough in these final 3?
Do you have to split one of these games against a ranked team? I mean, I think maybe for it to be like, for everyone to kind of feel good about like what happened this season, I think you need to beat either Clemson or Louisville and not mess up against Boston College.
So 9-3.
I
go
think
2-1.
Yeah, I mean, if you just beat Boston College and you sustain a 4-game losing streak in the middle of it, yeah, I mean, we're gonna feel it on our message boards. I know that much. We've already felt it for even the games they were winning close. we started feeling it. So yeah, I think probably, and I think they're due for a rank win. Pat Narduzzi's had one 8 years in a row. They
really?
They don't have one yet.
I didn't know that. That's a remarkable stat, Jim. Nice job.
That's an old RJ stat.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
okay.
He used to have that one.
That is good. Well, I kind of think like, no, nobody's going to feel good about a 4-game losing streak if they lose these next 2 and then beat Boston College. But even if that happens, they could win a bowl and go 9-4, which, yeah, there's a lot of context and caveats and all that stuff. But like 9-4 is still on the surface a good season. Like I know many Pitt fans will still find a way to be pissed off about 9-4, but like it's still good, like even with a 4-game losing streak that turns a 7-0 start into an 8-4 regular season, 9-4 would be a good season. But obviously 9-3 in the regular season with a win in one of these 2 games would be better. So yeah, I don't know. Green says, I've always thought that SMU was a lot better than Clemson and we would have a better chance of beating Clemson. I hope I'm right. 17-14 Pitt. I don't know. Who do you think would win head-to-head, Jim? Clemson or SMU? Let's say it's a neutral field. Let's no home field. Or you could say it's at SMU in front of the 30,000 fans or whatever it is.
I will say I underestimated SMU going into that game. Like I walked out of that game, I was like, oh, like they're good everywhere. They're explosive. They have great defense. They fly around. They just good Texas high school football players up and down that roster. I could see a world where they're better than Clemson. I mean, I guess I'll know a little bit better when I watch Clemson in person in 2 days, or 3 days. But I don't know. I could buy SMU being better than Clemson, at least this 1 year, just because everything seems to just be converging just right for the Mustangs.
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to need help to get into the top 12, but I mean, I think with the way we've seen this season go, I'm not ruling out like 4 more losses for the teams that are currently in the top 12. I mean, it just sort of feels like it's possible. I don't even not even looking at their schedules or anything. I just think it's possible, maybe even likely, that there's going to be a bunch more losses. So if SMU takes care of business, it could very much be a playoff team. Got to win the ACC, of course. Patrick McKinney says beers at the saloon if we win on Saturday. Hey, Jim, you can go to the saloon of Mount Lebanon after the Clemson game if Pitt wins. So
there's a decent chance I'll be up that way. So possible.
Yeah. South Hills, coming to South Hills, huh?
Oh yeah.
Maybe I should do like the post game show from a bar sometime. That'd be a riot. But you know what the problem is with that? Somebody said that once. They're like, "Oh, you should have like do a live show from a bar." But the thing is, like when like the fan or one of those radio stations goes to a bar, they have like speakers and stuff, so the people that are there can actually hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Like this would just be me sitting at a table talking, and you would only hear it if you're like right next to me. And in the sound of a bar, you wouldn't hear it. So I mean, like I don't think that'd be much of a draw. It would just be fun to drink and do that kind of thing. The biggest draw of all, of course, is home field apparel. I have my home field sweatshirt on. Flames. That is not Liberty, Jim. Don't think that I'm don't think I'm repping the libs here. That's not Liberty. That's UIC, University of Illinois Chicago. I got it because Fish played one of my favorite shows there back in 2013 or something like that. I didn't go to it. It's just a show I really enjoy listening to, and I thought it was a sweet sweatshirt. And as with all home field sweatshirts, it's super soft. It's super comfortable. Love the way it fits. This one doesn't have super long strings. My only complaint about a home field thing is that my other home field sweatshirt has super long strings. This does not. It's just a great sweatshirt and a great hoodie. And all their stuff at homefieldapparel.com is great. Their Pitt collection is, you can't top it. It is just outstanding. And right now, if you go and use the promo code PIT24, you can get 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com. So use that promo code PIT24, get 15% off homefieldapparel.com for some of the best Pitt gear you can find. Donovan Reed says Pitt does not try to commit to the run. Pitt can run if they try, but they don't try. Eventually, you'll see Desmond Reed run the ball when a team tries. So I spent all week last week, Jim, talking about how Pitt needed to run the ball more, how they needed to commit to the run. There were a few issues, I think, that came up in that regard. On Saturday, there were a couple times where they tried to commit to the run, and I thought they had some success. I don't think they're giving Desmond Reed enough touches. I forget, what did he end up with in that game? It doesn't matter. He didn't touch the ball enough. He's still the best playmaker on the team, and he didn't touch the ball enough. I would say that. One of the big problems, and Cade Bell pointed this out yesterday, is they kept getting in bad down and distance situations, first down penalties and things like that created 1st and 15 or 2nd and 15, and it's hard to run in those situations. The other complicating factor, which is probably the most important one, is their offensive line is just not playing very well. And they haven't been playing well pretty much all season, and then they lost their best lineman in Branson Taylor. Ryan Jacoby's been down. They're moving guys around. I mean, this is a team that went into Saturday's game 7-1, with an offense that had a lot of success earlier in the season, and they were so desperate that they switched like 3 offensive line positions. I gotta think, I forget if you and I talked about this, but like, how many times do you think that's ever happened? That a team in that position the Pitt was in, not forced by injury, made 3 changes on the offensive line at that point in the season. Like, that to me speaks to a bit of desperation, because that's a pretty drastic move, isn't it?
I would say. I did not have Isaiah Montgomery's first career start on my bingo card last week. I'll say that much. But yeah, I mean, it did feel like desperation. I mean, like, all right, we got to try something here. And I don't know. I mean, I think last week I was like, maybe they should just try Ryan Barrett left tackle, because he's supposedly your best tackle. And obviously that didn't go very well, because he got a bunch of false starts and penalties, and just about everything that could go wrong did go wrong for him that game. So I don't know. I think my words last week were, they just need to play better, like all of them, all 5 of them. And like, there's no free agency. I think even Narduzzi said that in his press conference. He's like, this is who we have. Like, we can't change it. So yeah, you just got to just play better.
Yep. Yeah. And like, as good as Desmond Reed is, if you don't block for him, it's hard. Like, even the best running backs of all time need a little bit of a crease, a little bit of space, and it's just not happening. And I think it's going to get even tougher this week. So, I mean, I think Desmond Reed is going to have to get a lot of touches in the passing game. I'm the biggest. Yeah, again, I've said they need to run the ball more, but it's tough sledding right now. It's tough sledding for this offense. Pitt Wins says, does anybody else find it a little suspicious that every time we go down 2 or 3 touchdowns, Eli takes a big hit, walks off the field, done for the day, and then he comes back next week fine? How many times does this happen, Jim? He walks off the field. He walked off the field against Syracuse. They were winning that game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Games when they were down by 2 or 3 touchdowns. Cincinnati, he finished that game.
Mm-hmm.
West Virginia, they were down. I don't know if they ever got down 2 touchdowns, but they were down double-digit points, right? He finished that game.
Scores, yeah.
They were down 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns against SMU, but they just changed quarterbacks. Not because I don't think he got hurt in that game, did he?
No, it was the 4th quarter, and they were getting killed, so they just put in.
Right.
Yeah.
And this last game where he did walk off the field, done for the day, they weren't down 2 or 3 touchdowns.
They were down 2 points.
Right. And I don't think he's going to come back next week fine. So Pitt Wins to your question, I think every bit of the scenario you described has not happened.
I would agree with that.
Unless are we forgetting something?
No,
A scenario where this happened?
He left 2 games or 3 games early. One because they were getting killed, and twice because he got hurt.
Right.
And yeah, we kind of don't think he's going to play Saturday.
Yeah, I mean he's left 2 games due to injury. Left them early and did not return. And one they won, and the other one when he left they were down like 2 points. So
yeah, I don't know.
I don't think anyone I don't think anyone finds it suspicious because I don't think it's something that's happening. Nick Kozane says the offense seemed to want to force things down the field the past few weeks rather than taking what the defense gives them. I don't know, man. Like they can't win with that. I thought against Cal that was the issue. They tried to force the ball down the field. Syracuse, I don't know what happened there. They only had 44 plays. The SMU game just kind of got away from them. I think a big problem right now, and I think it's the reason Eli Holstein missed that very easy, makeable throw to Konate Mumfield that could have been a big gain and possibly a touchdown. I think a big part of the problem right now is the offense is in a slump. They've been in a slump for 4 games, and everybody wants to be the hero. Everybody wants to make that biggest play, and they end up pressing. They end up forcing it. And so Eli Holstein has that opportunity to get the ball to Konate Mumfield on a wide open pass, a pass he's made all season. They could turn into a big play, and he throws it in the dirt. I think he's just too amped up. And maybe he was worried about pressure a little bit and didn't step into the throw the way he needed to. But I think everybody's pressing right now because when you are struggling like their offense has been, that's what happens. So I don't know if they're trying to force things downfield or they're not taking what the defense gives them. I mean, ultimately, that's what it comes down to. You have to take what the defense gives you. But I just think – I don't think they're loose. I think they're playing too tight because they're struggling.
Yeah, and they're behind the sticks a lot. They're getting a false start on first downs. Like nothing. It's just everything's out of sync.
Yep. Let me scroll through here. Find out what else these guys. The problem is I'm following up on things that people were commenting a few a half hour ago. So let's see. Try and get up to date here. Yeah, Robert Johnson says the Branson Taylor loss changed everything. We need Ryan Jacoby back at guard to maybe win 1 or 2 this season. It's hard to build depth in today's game. It is. It is hard to build depth. I think going into this season, we felt like Pitt's starting offensive line would be okay, but if they had to go into the depth, they might be in trouble. And I think that's what's happened. You know, I think they've had to go into the depth, and that's caused trouble. And I think it's made it hard to run the ball. I think it's made it hard to pass protect. It's been hard to pass because it's, you know, they're giving up too much pressure, and they're getting pressure. Opponents are getting pressure. SMU did this. Syracuse did this. Cal did this. Virginia did this without blitzing all that much. And Pitt hasn't been able to get them out of that kind of defensive, get them out of that kind of defensive approach. So I don't know what the solution is there. I guess you have to find holes in the zone or make plays against it, but it's tough. And I think we talked about it last week of teams not blitzing and, Pitt not being able to make them pay for it. All right. Last thing here. T-Man says, who's doing the doubleheader? Friday basketball, Saturday football. He says he'll be at both. I'll be at both. Jim, you'll be at both. Or is Friday the one you're going back and forth on?
Friday.
Yeah. Okay. So you'll do the football doubleheader. You're deciding if you're going to do the triple header.
Yeah. Well, you could do a doubleheader Friday night, or how about the number 1 women's volleyball team playing in Oakland right before the basketball game?
What time does that start? 6?
5.
5. Oof. That's a little early to be there, man. I don't know if I can get to Oakland by 5 o'clock. I don't know if I want to get to Oakland.
Yeah, it's rush hour too. That's
the Liberty tunnels, like they're only one lane, like coming out, or going inbound. It's only one lane can go inbound until 6 o'clock. So it's extra annoying driving through there. Driving to like 7 o'clock basketball games, there's literally no difference whether I leave my house at 5:30 or 6. I get there at the same time, regardless, because that's how bad the traffic is, because only one lane coming out of the Liberty tunnels going inbound actually takes you across the bridge. The other one dumps you down into the south side. And that's doesn't help me get to the Peterson Event Center.
No.
So that's no good. All right, I think that's about it. You know, there were some other comments and questions here, mostly people just arguing with each other about Pitt's running game, and you know, it's good to have conversations. You know, you got to talk it out sometimes. But we'll see what Pitt can do against Clemson. I'll be there. You'll be there. We'll see what Pitt does against West Virginia. I'll be there. You might be there. We'll find out. And yeah, it'll be a weekend of Pitt sports. Either way, we will be talking about it after the game on Saturday, probably around 6 or 7 o'clock, right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Possibly at the Saloon in Mount Lebanon with Patrick McKinney. So I can only assume Patrick's buying. Is that what he was inviting us to do? He said he was what did he say? Beers at the Saloon if we win Saturday. Gluten free, of course. He didn't say he's buying. So Patrick,
I know Patrick. Like,
you do?
He's from Johnstown.
Is he going to buy? Is he buying?
I think he'd buy us a beer.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens on Saturday. They got to win first, right? You got to take it one step at a time, Jim. You can't start looking ahead. You got to go 1-0. I've really boiled it down to I want to go 1-0 with like small things. Not like I want to go 1-0 this Saturday. Like I want to go 1-0 finishing this podcast. You know what I mean? And then I want to go 1-0 brushing my teeth. You know, 1-0 taking my contacts out. I think if you set small goals, they're more easily achievable. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm going for. But anyway, I'm going to go 1-0, closing this things out. I would appreciate it if everybody goes 1-0 with liking this video and subscribing to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you won't miss the morning pit tomorrow or the live show on Saturday night. We're not doing one on Friday night, Saturday night after the game and everything else we do. And then, of course, check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Jim, thanks for your time tonight. We appreciate you. Thanks to everybody in the comments and the questions. You guys have a good rest of the night. Enjoy the rest of the week. We'll talk to you tomorrow for the morning pit on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com and then the live stream Saturday night right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.